Greetings, this is Artie from Artifact Electronics. In today's episode, we'll be having a look at this Xbox 360 video game console. I picked this console up recently and it is supposed to be defective. The seller mumbled something about the disk drive not working correctly, but it was relatively inexpensive, so I thought I'd give it a shot. Now I have this thing all hooked up. Why do I use that crappy TV? The answer is very simple. It's very easy to get the TV, the object under repair, and whatever other accessories into the frame easily, instead of having to keep swiveling the camera up and down to show the video output. The display is not very clear, but it'll serve its purpose. But anyway, here it is. It's hooked up to a power brick, which is probably about 15% the size of the whole console itself. And there's a proprietary AV cable plugged into the back. So let's see what she does. Oh, what I forgot is I also have a wireless controller for it. The wireless control, none of the accessories came with it. This was just for the console itself, which has a hard drive installed on top. So let's see what it does. I can hear noises from the DVD drive. It does boot up. And after a few seconds it should go to the home screen, which it does. So you have to select a profile. Well, before selecting a profile, you have to pair the controller with the console. So the way we do that is we put the console into pairing mode, we turn on the controller, and put the controller into pairing mode, and there you go, it paired, which is indicated by these this quadrant 1 lighting up on the controller and the corresponding quadrant lighting up on the console. So now we can select a profile, and it wants us to connect to Xbox Live, for which it needs a internet connection, which we won't use for now, so I'll say no. And we get to the main screen. Now the options on here that are of interest to us, or the option, is the open tray option. So open the tray. And nothing happens. I heard a click where it tried to eject the disk tray, but nothing happened. So let's try that again, and no dice. Now I heard of people banging on the side of the machine or on top of the drive to make it release, and I don't think that's a very good idea, because there's the laser head in there, and banging on this thing is not going to do the head a whole lot of good. So what we'll do now is we'll try to open up this marvel of technology and see if we can find why that door won't slide open. Now, before going on any further, I do have some idea of what could be wrong with this. With the tray not opening, is either it could be really dirty inside, which gums up the tray mechanism, doesn't let it move smoothly, and there's just not enough power to open it up. Or what is even more common is there is a DC motor driving a bunch of gears to open and close the motor. And what happens is that belt slightly, very slightly expands or stretches, and when that happens it starts slipping, and the net result is again that there isn't enough force to open the tray. But we'll have to get inside, and that's an adventure upon itself. So let's get started. First thing we do is we take off the hard drive, and this contains a 20 gig 2.5-inch SATA drive, and that's really, other than the drive, there's really no electronics in here. It just has a breakout cable that goes to the connector plug that plugs into the top of the machine. The next thing we have to do is remove this top cover here. Actually, no, the next thing is the front plate. And again, some people will go in and just kind of stick their nails in here and rip this thing off. But since I just came back from the nail salon, I won't want to ruin my nails. So I will actually enlist the help of a screwdriver to get it loosened on top, get the first few tabs to break free, and then the whole thing comes off. Looking at the back of it, it has the power switch over here. It has these two flip doors with return springs on them that you use to put in external memory cards, and it has two USB connectors that are accessed through this. Now, on a lot of these doors will be flapping in the wind because the springs, people have just given these a rough treatment, and that causes these springs to come out, and that'll just give you flappy flaps. Same down here, because this flap's bigger, it has a spring and it has a metal plate holding it in place, but you'll see a lot of these with one or more of these doors either missing or just flapping around. I've looked around. Probably the cheapest way to do it is to buy like a used faceplate or something and harvest the parts necessary to repair the doors. So next we need to take the top cover off, which is held by 3 tabs on each side. And unless you know where they are, it's kind of difficult. So I'm going to cheat for everybody's benefit and use an extra top cover I have to show you where the tabs are. This is what it looks like removed. And if we put this on top, that'll show us where approximately the tabs are. Now, these tabs you can get to by poking through holes on the side of the case. But unfortunately, the tabs in front don't have holes. So what we need to do is utilize a screwdriver here to, unfortunately, have to use some force to get them off. That always makes me cringe because I do not want to break those tabs, but there's not much of a choice. And there you go. After wiggling the screwdriver in there, they finally come off. So now if we use this as a template, then we know that the second tab is approximately here, and the third tab is approximately here. Now it seems that the tab on the other side also came out. And there you go. Use patience and don't rip them off at once, because yes, these tabs will break off. But here's the top cover removed. And all we can really see inside now is the cage for the main PCB and other stuff. But now we have to repeat this whole thing for the bottom. Next is the bottom. The machine's upside down, and I will cheat yet again by taking an extra bottom cover I have. Now this one looks like I'm going to be able to remove, well, I'm going to have access to these holes, and yes, it lifts out. That is the first one. Then we have the second one here, and we should probably do them evenly on each side. Yeah, and not push them back in with your finger again. That was very smart. But, oh, it's already loose. So now to the last tab, which is the very end. And this one. Oh, guess to remind myself where that is. Oh, that's and here's the bottom cover with all the tabs intact. And again, all we can see here is the cage with the electronics in. So here's where the real fun begins, and that's the part where we have to actually get the case halves open. Now if we look at the back of it, we will see that there's 7 tabs over here, or 7 tab access holes. And what you got to do is press those down while putting some, while trying to spread the 2 halves apart. The way I do that is just using 2 fingers, pushing away from each other, and then taking a screwdriver and hitting each of the tabs in turn. 1. You can hear that satisfying click. So now this side is open. And again, try to spread the halves. And I'm not hearing, there's one click. It's kind of a half-ass click I'm getting there. I guess this side doesn't want to open. There you go. Yeah, I know it was loud, but nothing broke. So let's spread them apart, and now go to the other side. Now when we look at the other side's a lot easier. There's these big tabs over here that are easily accessible, and a miniature tab at the end. One thing you should be able to see is there's the leftovers of a sticker left here. This used to be the warranty sticker. It's a green Microsoft logo covering the middle tab, which you have to inadvertently break to open this up. And they put that on there to make sure that they can detect when you've gone in and opened this, so they can promptly cancel your warranty on this. But again, all we got to do is go ahead on these tabs, lift them up, and again, if you put some force on it. And there's a really small catch at the very beginning that you have to push up to release. And this one just wants to keep going back. So we lay it down neatly, and the top comes off. So let's see. What do we have left? We still have the bottom attached to it. And the only other thing we need to look out for, and probably do now rather than later so we don't forget, and that is the button assembly for the drive release, which you can see right over here. That's got to come off before we take the bottom off, and that's how it comes off. Just stick a screwdriver in there gently and it just pops off from where it came. Don't forget to put this back before putting on the bottom of the case. And other than that, so now we got to get the bottom of the case off, and this is how we do it. Using a T10 screwdriver, we remove 6 screws. Make note of which ones I'm removing, because you don't want to be removing the other ones. That's when you want to get to the motherboard, and remove the motherboard from the cage, and we probably won't be doing that. But here's the second one, the third one, 4, 5, and finally 6. Now we can turn the whole thing around and the cover should pop off. So there's the innards, and the drive itself is actually not fastened in place anymore. All we got to do to get it out is to lift it out, and then in the back there is a data connector and the power connector, which is obscured but will be obvious when you look at it, and the whole drive comes out. Now what are we looking at here? We're looking at a lot of heat sinks actually, but really the most important parts are, we have the GPU over here and the CPU over here, or under here I should say. Then there's a small shroud leading to dual fans, cooling fans. And one interesting thing to note is that on earlier revisions of this case, the GPU only had a single heatsink without this copper tube and secondary heatsink extension. And I guess they figured out that that wasn't enough, so they've actually added this in all later revisions of the Xbox to provide for better cooling. Here's the drive on its back. The two case halves of the drive case halves are held together by 4 screws, which I've already loosened, and we'll just remove. And to turn it around and just pull the upper half up and away, and the lower half just kind of drops off, and there we have the drive in all of its beauty. Now looking at this drive, it's clean inside. Remember I told you that it looked like the warranty sticker was broken on it already? It's like somebody went in here and tried to do some maintenance, and well, they did a great job in cleaning it up, because it is, compared to some of the others I've seen, it is very clean on the inside. But in order to have a look at the belt, we need to slide this tray out, and it really, don't force it out. There's really 2 things you need to do to have it come out easy. First thing is, note this plastic bar over here. That's the bar that raises and lowers the head assembly. What I'm going to do is push that bar in, and then go to underneath the front. Just kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see the drive belt on a over here, and if you turn this with a screwdriver in a clockwise direction, which I'm having a hard time getting a good grip on this, but there you go, the tray starts moving upward, and you can now just pull the tray out and see the mechanism. Now, there's no need to remove the tray at this point because it's clean, but if you see any dirt marks over here, make sure you pull it out all the way and you clean this very well with alcohol and a cotton swab, and just blow the air out of it, blow any kind of dirt out of it, but caution again. Here's a laser head that the nozzle is pointing at. You do not want to blow air directly on this. It is suspended in a very fragile manner, and if you give it a full blast of air, you may deform the mountings of it. So just kind of go around it, and if you see any dirt, you may want to take a cotton swab with some alcohol and very lightly clean the laser lens on top. But there, right in the middle, you can see the drive belt, and let's take that one out and compare it to a new one. Now the belt is really easy to remove. Use a pair of tweezers and just pick it off, and here's the belt. I kind of measured it, and it showed to be approximately 24 millimeters in diameter, inner diameter. That's approximate because it's slightly deformed already, but doing some researches, I guess the original spec says it's supposed to be 22 millimeters, so that extra 2 millimeters in diameter would most likely explain belt slippage and why it can't open the tray properly. So I tried some rubber bands and this and that, and of course I didn't have anything that worked the right size, so I bit the bullet and went and bought a pack of 10 belts on eBay. Here's what I got. As you can see, they're approximately half the size of the original one. They are a little bit more flexible than the original one, but that's also probably because the original one has aged and is no longer flexible. But there are probably several pages of sellers on eBay selling this exact same belt. I mean, most of them even use the same picture. So even though it's smaller, it does have the right cross-section. I mean, the cross-section is a little smaller than the original, but at least it does have a square cross-section. And I guess at this point there's not much else to do than take this belt and put it on, and then put the whole assembly back in the machine and see if it opens now. So let me give you a little explanation of why I think when the belt starts slipping, why the door doesn't open at all. I mean, you can't even see it shaking and coming out halfway. It just doesn't move an inch. And the reason for that is, let's see. Here's a new belt installed. I just used the tweezers to put it in. And here's the hub that the DVD sits on. And here's the top cover that has a permanent magnet in it. So when the DVD goes in, this top magnet drops onto the hub and holds the DVD in place. I mean, that's really what makes up the spindle, so the DVD is held firmly in its location so it doesn't flap around. I mean, if I put a DVD in here and powered this thing up, the DVD would basically fly off. Now this magnet is pretty strong. You can hear a clunk when this door closes and there's no CD in it. And what happens is that the magnetic force holding this to this is so strong that when the mechanism, before sliding the tray out, it tries to lower this whole assembly so the tray can freely slide open. And when this magnet holds holds against the spindle, there's not enough force for it to break the magnetic bond to lower this, and thus the door can't open. People have come up with all sorts of wild and crazy solutions where they put pieces of tape on this to create more distance so that the magnet is less strong, and others have come up with easier solutions, and that is when you do have a DVD in here, it will usually open because the DVD gives you extra bit of distance between this piece of metal and the magnet, and usually the force in here is enough to break the magnetic bond and open it up. But when there's no DVD in there and this thing is directly on here, the bond is just too strong. So what some people say is, hey, just open this thing up any way you can, and when you're not using the machine, keep a blank DVD in there so that the next time you turn it on and you open it, there's more of a chance of it opening. But quite frankly, the solution, which we will see in a minute if it works or not, why deal with all of that if you can buy a belt cheaply? And as you can see from the procedure, it's really not that hard to go in and replace the belt with a pair of tweezers and then put the whole thing back together again and see if it works. So be patient. If you have a problem of this type, go and you suspect this is a problem, go ahead and order yourself a couple of belts. They're really cheap and they'll make life easy on you. Okay, I put the top cover back on and put it back in. So let's have a look-see. See if it even boots up after all the good stuff I did. But yeah, it looks like one of the good things about the 360 is there's not a whole bunch of interconnecting cables, if any. Actually, the only interconnecting cables are the power and data cables in the back of the drive. So there's much less of a chance of you messing up things with cables in this because there are so few. But anyway, here we are on the main screen. Notice that I have not installed the hard drive on the side, but that's not really necessary for testing this. So we are on open tray. If you remember last time, it wouldn't open the tray. And to make, well, let's try it like this first. And woohoo, it opens up without a disc inside. Now, last time when we tested it, the machine was actually sitting upright. So let me sit it upright. I have to hold it in because the drive really isn't held in place by anything. And a little sideline, when you were disassembling it, you probably saw this piece of metallized tape going all the way over to the drive and holding the drive in place. I think that's done for assembly purposes because once the top cover is on, the drive is held firmly in place. So I didn't put this piece of tape back in here. But this is the test because supposedly if the drive slips, the problem really manifests itself when it's sitting upright and not a problem. Now, of course, for the test, I didn't have too many worries about the door opening, but does the drive work? So let's open it up, put a copy of Fear in there, and it's spinning up. And it's making a racket, which is always good. And it's loading up. So my cheap Xbox, I think I paid like $12 for it or something. And I did spend a lot of time cleaning up the outside of it. It didn't look too good, but the inside was really clean. But as I said, it kind of felt like somebody had been in there. They cleaned it up, but they couldn't figure out what was wrong with the drive, so they put it back together and sold it to some idiot like me and figured, hey, $12 in the pocket's better than having a non-working Xbox. So anyway, this thing works. So let's put it all together again. So I went back together. You just do it in the reverse order, and it goes together a lot quicker than it comes apart. This was definitely designed for manufacturability and not so much for repair. But go through the exercise. It's an interesting puzzle to solve. So final test. If I broke anything while putting it together, see if it still comes up. And I'm also going to try a game. Now the previous game I used, the Fear game, had a really clean DVD. I'm going to use another game where the DVD is a bit scratched up. It's Tropico 4 or Tropico 4. It's kind of like tomatoes and tomatoes, I guess. But yeah, this one's scratched up a little bit, so. And I'm going to leave the machine upright, so it's a truer test of whether the drive actually does work. Oh, it makes me sign in again. Come on, I don't want to sign in. Also note that the door, of course, opened in the beginning without any jittering, any groans, or any other weird noises. And it's funny, every DVD goes through a different sound pattern when loading, but this is the sound pattern it makes when it's actually loading the game, and there you go. So, well, good, we got this thing repaired. Now, closing words, if you're at all interested in video games, of course, I think one of the biggest bargains today is an Xbox 360. You can get them pretty cheaply. I mean, if you're going to get a fully working one with a controller and the power brick, you're not going to find a replacement for this easily. Or in your parts box, I doubt it. But if you want to get the whole system in working shape, it's probably between $40 and $50. Games at this point cost an average of $2. And there were a lot of really good games made for this platform. Alright, it's not up to snuff with the Xbox One, but it's pretty close, and for a lot less money you can get something where there's a very large supply of different games out there, and that'll provide you with hours and hours of fun. A lot better than watching TV. At least I think so. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it and you learned something, and maybe one day you'll buy your own and you'll fix it up. And make sure to give me a thumbs up so we can continue making videos here. And of course, subscribe. One other thing that I'm looking for is one other symptom that Xbox 360's display is they monitor the chip temperature, and if the GPU starts overheating, you basically get something called the red ring of death, where these bicolor LEDs turn red and start doing a dance here. And there is a repair for that too, but in order to show that to you, I'm going to have to find one first that exhibits that symptom. So until next time, take it easy.